Hi, geometry. Solving by completing the square is a nice method to use when your a value of your ax squared plus bx plus c, when your a value equals 1, and also I feel when your b is even. If these two cases are true, I think completing the square is a nice method to use. If they're not, and it's not factorable, I might recommend the quadratic formula. So we've already done completing the square. You might remember we had to use it when we were changing circle equations from standard form into center radius form. So our steps, the first step was the setup. And in this step, you are going to move the constant. You're going to move your constant term to the other side. And you're going to leave a space. So what does that look like? Well, in this problem, the 11 is my constant term. So I'm going to add 11 to both sides. And I'm going to write x squared plus 6x, leave a space, equals my 11. And we can leave a space after that as well. So then my next step, step 2, this is where I'm going to complete the square. This is when you do your b divided by 2 and you square it. So in this problem, my b is 6. So 6 divided by 2 squared equals 3 squared, which is 9. So I'm going to add 9 to both sides. On the left, it completes my square. On the right, it's balancing my equation. Let's write that underneath and balance the equation. So now, if you might remember, the next step is where we factor. And when I factor, it's the square root of the first, the square root of the second, and then the sign comes from the middle term. So in this problem, the square root of the first is x, the square root of the third, the square root of 9 is 3, and my sign comes from the middle, that's plus. So my perfect square trinomial, x squared plus 6x plus 9, factors perfectly into the binomial x plus 3 squared. This is the whole point of completing the square. You want to get your trinomial factored. And that is equal to 11 plus 9, or 20. So now we're to our last step, and we are going to, on this step, we are going to take the square root of both sides and solve for x. So on the left side, when I take the square root of the left side, that red square root and this green exponent of 2 cancel. So on the left side, I get x plus 3. On the right side, I also have to do the square root. And when I do the square root, I'm going to put a plus minus in front of it. And I have equals plus minus the square root of 20. Since I've run out of room, I'd like to rewrite this up here. So I have my x plus 3 equals plus minus the square root of 20. Okay, so here's the deal. I need to solve for x now. So I need to subtract 3 to cancel this plus 3. And when I do that, I'm going to stick my number right in front of the plus minus. So I'm subtracting 3 from both sides. And on the left side, I get x. Now on the right side, where do I put that minus 3? Where I'm going to put that minus 3 right in front of my plus minus the square root of 20. So this is the answer that you're going to see a lot of times for these problems. It's really two answers. It's x equals negative 3 plus the square root of 20, and it's x equals negative 3 minus the square root of 20. So this is another way to write the exact same answer. Or, let me find my calculator here. If you're thinking about this as negative 3 plus the square root of 20, the square root of 20 is 4.47. So negative 3 plus 4.47 gives me a 1.47. And my negative 3 minus the square root of 20, So minus 4.47 will give me a negative, make sure you see that negative 7, that's written kind of messy. Let me back up a little bit. Negative 7.47. So these are those two answers. You could really answer in either way, but you'll find for our purpose, most of my answers will be left in this first form, negative 3 plus minus the square root of 20. So why don't we look at one more of these? Let's look at one where I actually have a perfect square. So when I do my plus minus, I actually have to keep going. So let's see what one of those problems look like. So my first step is the setup. So that's when I write my x squared plus 16x together with a line. And I move my 36 to the other side. It's a minus 36, so I'm going to add it to both sides, and I get 36, and I'm going to leave a space. And now I'm going to complete the square. That's going to be my 16 divided by 2 squared. That's 8 squared. That's going to give me a 64. So now that's the number that I add to the left side to create my perfect square trinomial. And I also add it to my right side to balance my equation. So now's when I factor. It's the square root of the first term, which is going to give me an x, square root of the 64, which is going to give me an 8, and a plus sign from the middle, squared equals 100. So now I'm going to take this, now I'm ready for step 4. I'm going to take the square root of both sides. And when I do that, I get a little plus minus in front of my square root. So on the right side, my exponent of 2 and my red square root cancels. I get x plus 8 equals plus minus, and the square root of 100 is 10. So now this is where I solve for x. I need to move my 8 to the other side. I'm going to do that by subtracting 8. I'm going to put my minus 8 right in front of my plus minus. So I get x equals negative 8 plus minus 10. So you can't stop here. You know why? Because there's no square roots. You have to do this math. You have two answers for x. One answer is negative 8 plus 10, which is 2. The other answer is negative 8 minus 10, which is negative 18. Those are my two answers, 2 and negative 18. And I need to finish it because there's no square root in this problem. So the first problem we did together, I would leave my answer if it was plus minus the square root of some number. However, if it's a perfect square, you need to work your math down to your final two answers. Thank you.